Great to be joined again in 2023 by episode3.net's Matt Dalgleish. Matt, Happy New Year. The farmers didn't get much of a break as usual. No such thing as a holiday for them at the cattle and sheep markets.
No, that's right. Happy New Year, Ricky. It's been an interesting start. I mean, some are still battling with floods. If you've seen what's happened in Western Australia, it's pretty shocking. But and there's delayed harvest as well. So they've been busy through the whole of the break, I think.
Yeah, I think you had predicted there'd be, during 2022, there'd be a correction in the cattle market. Those heady prices we were seeing through 2021, 22, they were going to come down. But did you think they'd fall as far as they have?
Look, it's probably a little bit extended beyond what I thought for the start of the year. But again, this time, only a handful of sales since the start of the year. It's probably early days to say it's a significant, kind of correction that's going to, be there for good or stay for a while. I'd probably want to see how January develops, just to see whether these are the levels we're going to kind of expect for the rest of the season or whether we might see it pick up a little bit.
Well, we're seeing prices, in excess of $11 a kilo carcass weight. We're below $8. Do you think we'll have a little bit of a bounce back above that as all the markets get back up and running?
Yeah, I do think so. Just going back to some of that water that's been around the country in the lead up to the end of the year, that's going to mean that it's still pretty warm, and all that water in the profile means that we're going to get some pretty good pasture growth into the first part of this year. So I think there are parts of the country that will be looking for animals and people to want to restock and eat some of that pasture. Harvest was a massive one, so. There's a lot of grain around as well, so I think they're all kind of boding well for some underlying demand to start to creep in personally.
Yeah, looking at the Eastern Young Cattle Indicator, just drilling into the local sales, as you say, does look like low volumes, particularly in Queensland where you usually see a lot. I imagine that incredible amount of rain they're having at the moment, a big driver there.
That's right, and that's the thing. At the moment, people are just concerned about the volumes of rain, but once that dissipates, and they start to see it, generate into, it doesn't rain grass, they say. So once it does start to generate some grass in the paddock, that's going to kind of make people start to think, oh, look, I could probably get a few more stock to kind of clear this out. It's one thing the farmers hate seeing, Ricky, is grass growing in the paddock and no one to eat it.
Yeah, silver lining perhaps on those storm clouds for the Queenslanders. Let's jump across to the sheep side of the equation. A little bit more stable, really. The sheep have been performing a little bit more consistently, albeit, prices a bit down on where they were maybe early last year.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the thing was, though, that with the sheep and lamb markets, Ricky, last season, they probably had a bigger decline in pricing. So it could be the case that cattle have just caught up at the start of this year with some of the sheep declines we saw last year. But sheep and lamb have pretty much opened this year where they closed last year. So they haven't continued the fall like the cattle market has. One thing, I guess, to watch with the sheep and lamb market as we head into 2023 is just how things develop, in particular in both the USA and China in terms of the economic situation. Both of them are looking a bit shaky, although China is now starting to acknowledge their COVID zero policy. It hasn't been working, so they're opening up, which might be a better thing for their economy. But we just keep an eye on those things because they're crucial to global demand for our sheep meat, those two markets in particular.
Yeah, I'm noticing amongst the figure in terms of sale yards, you've got Wagga below 1,000. I mean, that's quite unusual for that part of town. Is it going to be a case of maybe we'll see more volume and possible further price falls if all the markets fire up again?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it has been the case, particularly in the south, like in Victoria and parts of that Riverina and New South Wales. The spring was quite an unusual spring. I think we've spoken about this before. It was much colder than normal and much wetter than normal, and that's meant that there's been, a little bit kind of trickier to put weight on some of these lambs. And yeah, we did see, if you look at the yardings coming through in Victoria last year, in the lead up to Christmas, we probably, that spring flush was probably about nearly 500,000 head lower than what it was the previous season. Just not as many lambs about, or at least ready to bring to market. Whereas I think we might see a bit of an overcompensation at the start of this year now with some of those lambs starting to come forward, and that could pressure price a little bit. But like I said, I don't think they're going to kind of see price collapse. It's probably more of just a gentle easing, perhaps. But as we head into the winter, things could tighten up again, and we might start to see that normal seasonal peak start to appear.
Any big calls for this year we're going to see in livestock potentially? As we might review these at the end of the year. You thought there'd be that correction in cattle. That certainly happened, a bit heavier than you first expected. What do you reckon will happen either on the sheep or cattle front this year?
Oh, look, I could give you one that we've got to keep an eye on as well domestically for both those markets is just what's happening on the farm labour situation, but also, more importantly, what's happening in terms of labour availability in the meatworks. We know that the herd and the flock's growing. We know we're going to have higher slaughter as that flock and herd grows. But we've still got issues with capacity for labour in processing. So I'm worried that we might see a bit of a bottlenecks through parts of the year, and that could cause some price disruption to producers if we can't clear some of these stock in processing.
All right, we'll see how that tracks. We might even make some inquiries of some of those that might be able to grease the wheels on that front. Matt Dalgleish from episode3.net. That's the web address if you want to find out more from Matt and Andrew Whitelaw. Thanks for joining us today.
Cheers, Ricky.